All right, let's kick things off with a story that sounds, well, completely made up. But it's true. A friend of Robert Cialdini, he's the author whose work we're diving into today, she owned a jewelry store, and she was having the worst time trying to sell this one line of turquoise jewelry. I mean, the quality was good, the price was fair, but it just would not move. So she's about to leave for a business trip, totally fed up. She scribbles this quick, angry note to her saleswoman that basically says, everything in that case, price it at X and a half. Just sell it off, cut her losses. But when she came back a few days later, she wasn't just surprised. She was stunned. Get this. The saleswoman had misread her handwriting. She didn't cut the prices in half. She doubled them. She literally doubled the price of the stuff nobody wanted. And the entire line sold out. So how does that happen? It makes absolutely no sense, right? Double the price and it flies off the shelf? Well, to understand this completely backwards result, we have to look beyond just supply and demand. The real answer is hiding inside the mental shortcuts our brains use every single day. So what really happened here wasn't about the jewelry at all. It was about the customers. See, they were mostly well-off tourists who didn't know the first thing about turquoise, so their brains fell back on a simple, ingrained rule of thumb. Expensive equals good. The moment the price shot up, the jewelry suddenly seemed more valuable, more special. They weren't really buying turquoise. They were buying a shortcut. Ethologists, scientists who study animal behavior, have a name for this kind of thing: fixed action patterns. It's a fancy term, but just think of it like this. We all have these pre-recorded tapes in our heads, and when the right button gets pushed, a specific tape just plays automatically. Cialdini has a much catchier name for it. He calls it click-whir. The trigger, in the jewelry store it was the high price, that's the click. And that click activates the tape. The behavior that follows, that's the whir. For those shoppers, the click of a high price started the whir of, it must be good quality, I'll buy it. It's all automatic. Click, whir. And if you want to see just how powerful and automatic this is, look at the animal kingdom. A mother turkey's entire maternal instinct is triggered by one thing and one thing only: the cheep, cheep sound of her babies. If a chick is silent, she'll ignore it, or worse. But if you take her natural enemy, a stuffed polecat, and stick a little recorder inside that plays cheep, cheep, she'll gather it under her wing and protect it. The click of that sound is so powerful it completely overrides everything else. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's a turkey, I'm a person, I'm way more sophisticated than that. And you're right, our automatic behaviors are mostly learned, not just hardwired. But believe me, we have them, and we use them all the time. And we have to. I mean, can you imagine if you had to stop and rationally analyze every single piece of information, every choice you make all day long? You'd never get out of bed. We'd be paralyzed. These shortcuts, these rules of thumb, they're not a flaw in our design. They're a necessary feature. They let us navigate a ridiculously complicated world. But, and this is a huge but, here's the catch. Because these shortcuts are so automatic, they can be hacked. People who know what the triggers are can intentionally push our buttons to get us to play our behavioral tapes for their benefit. And this is what Cialdini calls the weapons of influence. It's a dramatic name, but it fits. Because in the hands of someone who knows what they're doing, our own mental shortcuts can be turned into tools to persuade us, sometimes without us even noticing. Let's look at a couple of the big ones. First up, we have reciprocity. This is a rule that is baked into every human society. It's the feeling that you have to repay, in kind, what another person has given you. Someone buys you a coffee. You feel this little urge to get the next one. It's the glue that holds us together. But this powerful rule can be used in some really clever ways. Cialdini tells this story about a Boy Scout. He says no to a $5 ticket. But then the kid immediately asks if he'll buy a $1 chocolate bar. And Cialdini buys two. Why? He didn't even want chocolate. It's because the Boy Scout made a concession. He retreated from his big request to a smaller one. That was the click. And the whir? Cialdini's brain automatically felt compelled to make a concession in return by going from no to yes. This tactic has a name. It's called the rejection then retreat technique. You start with a big request you know will probably get shot down. Then you retreat to a smaller, more reasonable request. That retreat feels like a gift, a concession, and it triggers that deep-seated reciprocity rule, making the other person feel almost obligated to meet you in the middle. Okay, the next weapon is a huge one: commitment and consistency.
As humans, we have this deep, almost obsessive need to be consistent with things we've already said or done. The second we make a choice or take a stand, we feel all this pressure from inside ourselves and from others to stick with it. A famous study shows this perfectly. It's called the foot in the door technique. Step 1. Researchers asked homeowners to put a tiny 3-inch sign in their window about safe driving. Easy, right? Almost everyone said yes. But that tiny yes did something profound. It changed how they saw themselves. I'm the kind of person who supports this cause. Step 2, 2 weeks later, a different person comes by and asks them to put a massive, ugly, drive carefully billboard on their front lawn. The result? A jaw-dropping 76% of them said yes. And that's the power of consistency. That first tiny commitment was the click, and the whir was their brain's automatic drive to act consistently with this new self-image. It's just easier to say yes again than to reevaluate who you are. And that makes even the smallest initial commitments an incredibly powerful tool for persuasion.
Okay, so what do? We can't just throw out our mental shortcuts. We'd be lost without them. The secret isn't to get rid of the autopilot. The secret is to learn how to recognize when somebody else is trying to grab the controls.
Ralph Waldo Emerson really nailed it. A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. See, consistency itself isn't the enemy. It's foolish, automatic, unthinking consistency that gets us into trouble. The goal is to spot when our desire to be consistent is being used against us.
So here's your defense system. First, trust your gut. Cialdini calls them stomach signs. You know that tight, uncomfortable feeling you get when you feel like you're being trapped into saying yes? That's your first alarm bell. Second, ask your heart of hearts. Just ask yourself one simple question. Knowing what I know now, if I could go back in time, would I make this choice again? If the honest answer is no, then you know you're being driven by manipulation, not genuine desire.
In the end, it all comes down to one thing: awareness. Just understanding that these principles of reciprocity and consistency exist is half the battle. When you can spot them being used on you in the real world, they lose their magic. The click doesn't automatically trigger the whir anymore. Instead, it triggers your conscious brain to wake up, take the controls, and decide for yourself. So I'll leave you with this challenge. Start looking for this stuff. Watch for it in ads, listen for it in sales pitches, notice it when a coworker asks for a favor. Because the moment you can put a name to the tactic, the moment you can say, that's rejection then retreat, or that's the foot in the door, you've taken back control. You're no longer on autopilot, you're flying the plane.